want to bring in Jonathan Schanzer. He's the Senior Vice President for Research at the Nonpartisan Foundation for the Defense of Democracy and a former terrorism finance analyst who has developed sanction packages against al-Qaeda and Hamas. We're also joined by our friend, CNN military analyst Colonel Cedric Leighton, retired from the U.S. Air Force. Jonathan, let me start with you. You're meeting with Israeli officials, talking with folks in Israel. What are they saying? Does it sound like, I mean, with these signals that we're getting from Prime Minister Netanyahu, is that something is going to happen? It's just a matter of time.
I think that's right. It does look like there will be some kind of an attack. Whether it is a measured one, whether it is commensurate with the numbers that we saw the other night remains unclear. I do think the Israelis are still taking their time. I think their rationale is that the Iranians took their time in responding to that strike on that facility near the Iranian embassy in Damascus. It was, of course, not an embassy, not a consulate. It was a building outside of that, which has been a source of some debate. But the Israelis are saying, look, they let us stew in our juices for a week or two. We can do the same. There's no rush here. That does seem to be part of the calculus. What is interesting, though, is they keep saying, look, you know, if you are trying to tell us to stop or to hold back, just a diplomatic response won't work. Perfunctory sanctions won't work. I do believe that there are some things that the United States might dangle, whether they be weapons packages, maybe a true effort to push Hezbollah north of the Litani River in Lebanon. In other words, the U.S., I think, has its work cut out for it in terms of just simply trying to appeal to what the Israelis need right now if the goal is indeed to get them to stand down.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of great options for the international community watching all of this in terms of contemplating what Israel might ultimately decide to do. Colonel Leighton, what do you think? If Israel wanted to strike back at Iran, but doing it in a way that did not trigger an automatic, very aggressive response from the Iranians, what might they do?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Jim. I think in that particular case, they'll always get some kind of a response from the Iranians. But if they wanted to go small or mild, I would say it would be something like a cyber attack, but a limited cyber attack. It would be something that would probably affect, let's say, the military networks that Iran uses, or potentially the nuclear networks. And of course, the Iranians know a lot about having that kind of an impact. Now, if they go big or medium, then there are several other options. For example, you have bases everywhere from Tabriz to Dezful all the way down to Chabahar that could potentially be targeted. Plus, Tehran is a pretty lucrative area for targeting as well, and that would indicate a really high-level maximum response that would probably escalate things. But if the Iranians are going to respond to something like this, they are going to do it probably like their president announced. In other words, anything that the Israelis do will get a response. And that is going to, of course, be a significant issue going forward for the G7 as well as for everybody else involved in this.
Yeah, Jonathan, I mean, after October 7th, I mean, there seemed to be a kind of a universal recognition around the world that Israel was going to have to respond. It was going to have to do something to punish Hamas. There doesn't seem to be that uniformity after what the Iranians did over the weekend, maybe perhaps in part because of what Alex was just saying a few moments ago. The Israelis did, and the allies did such a spectacular job in defending Israel. But, I mean, the former Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, said Israel needs to focus on the hostages. He doesn't really want to see Netanyahu go overboard here. It sounds as though there are some mixed feelings about all of this inside Israel, about what to do, how to press forward here.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all respect to former Prime Minister Olmert, I think he's got it exactly wrong. In fact, if anything right now, Hamas really looks like small fries compared to what just happened. The Iranians have surrounded the Israelis with multiple proxy armies, not just Hamas, but Hezbollah, the Houthis, Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria. They've been waging a proxy war against Israel for the last 6 months. I think the world has not awakened to that. And now the Iranians are attacking Israel directly. The Israelis, I think, at this point are feeling like they have no choice but to go at the head of the snake here and to make them pay a severe price. This, by the way, is the war. It's the real war right now. It's Israel versus Iran. These other groups are really not the issue. And I think that it is it's backward thinking right now. And I heard David Cameron say the same thing, that, you know, we need to get back to Hamas. Hamas is 95% finished. The Israelis are on the 5-yard line. They can finish that whenever they like. They need to think about how to deter Iran, which, by the way, is on the precipice of a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, but Colonel Layton, I mean, there's a lot to be said for what Jonathan is saying, but there's also the potential, is there not, for this thing to really spiral and really get ugly and get sort of inflamed in a way that it's going to be very difficult for the international community to contain it in terms of spillover in the region and just becoming a very messy conflict.
Yeah, that's for sure, Jim. And you know, one of the key things to remember, this could be a World War I like moment. In other words, where everybody gets together, they get different messages, everything's mixed up, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a major conflict. So this is the challenge. You know, Jonathan is right in the sense that this is you know, the real war is between Iran and Israel, and it also is a real, you know, pseudo alliance, even a sub-rosa alliance between some of the Sunni-led governments in the region on Israel's side, more or less, against the Shiites in Iran. And that's, you know, kind of that element is also part of this. So it's a very combustible situation, and the risk of escalation is extremely high.
All right, Jonathan Schanzer, Colonel Layton, thanks to both of you. Really appreciate it. Delicate time this week.